every day. The Morning News with Gord Gillies and Sue DL. Weekday mornings on 770 CHQR.
Well, Eddie, why are you back here promoting a new Olympic bid for Calgary?
I think there are so few places that are available for Winter Olympics. And as far as I'm concerned, Calgary was the best Olympic.
The Morning News with Gord Gillies and Sue DL. Weekdays, 5:30 to 9:30 on 770 CHQR. Going beyond the headlines, getting to the heart of the story. Calgary Today with Joe McFarland on 770 CHQR.
Not only is it the day after the plebiscite, but it's also Wednesday. So celebrate one and all because it's Wine Wednesday, brought to you by a Co-op Wine Spirits Beer, home of sommelier curated wine selections, and one of those fine sommeliers. I'm saying that correctly, right, Eric?
Yeah, I'm nailing
Perfect.
it. Yeah, crushing it.
My Southern Alberta French is a little rusty, so there's always that to go to. Eric Southward joining us, of course, for another edition of Wine Wednesday. And this one, it was funny when you guys sent me the email about, okay, this is the kind that we're bringing in, and you said it's a 2010 vintage, and you said, as soon as you said vintage, I went, really? Like, this is a classic in terms of wine. So what defines a vintage or a classic wine?
Yeah, well, this is, when we say vintage, like most wines you see have a vintage on it. That's just the year that the grapes were picked, essentially. But this wine's a little older, like it's 8 years. It's from 2010 from a very famous winery in Napa. We're breaking the bank today here on Wine Wednesday. But
not allowed to steal this stuff, apparently.
Absolutely. But vintage is also a term we use for wines that can age, can not only just last a year or two and maintain their level of deliciousness, but this wine will actually improve with age. This wine is still young. We're drinking this now and could age another 20 years, right? And these are the wines that are the exceptions to the rule. Most wines can't get better with age. This is one of those special ones.
When you have those special ones, is there a best before date? I know that sounds weird, but I assume at some point it can't get any better or it starts to deteriorate.
Totally. That's such a loaded question. So because personal preference comes into play, like I like my wines a little younger than most. Some of my colleagues and friends like their wines on the very old side. But yeah, wines will hit this plateau when they're kind of at their peak, and they'll stay there for a while before they start to decline. But again, if you don't know, the worst thing you can do is assume your wine is getting better.
Gotcha.
All wine has a best before date. We don't know when it is exactly, but it's all turning to vinegar. And if you don't know when you should drink your wine, the longer you wait, the more you're just increasing your chances of letting it spoil.
So you don't necessarily know where you called it the peak. You don't know where the peak of the wine really is because it depends solely on the connoisseur.
Yeah, like your taste, but also how you're storing it. Like there's so many factors. We can get in the weeds talking about stuff like this, but if you store it in a colder place, it's going to age slower. If you store it in a warmer place, oxygen moves faster. It's breaking the wine down quicker. But again, I just think if you don't know, open the wine and check it out, or instead of buying one really expensive bottle and try to time it perfectly, buy like 3 or 4 less expensive bottles and like open one every year and see where you like it. And once you love a wine, don't wait any longer, right? It's only changing. Just start popping corks.
And then by that point, you'll actually learn where the sweet spot is in the grand scheme of things for that particular wine that you like.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. The other interesting point, as soon as you poured it, you were starting to sift it around and spin it around in your hand. And I wonder, with an older wine like this, is that just to make sure the sediment isn't settling to the bottom, or what's the maneuvering there?
Joe's just referring to, I'm an over swirler. I'll swirl my water and stuff.
So you overdo it.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just, it makes it easier to smell. So basically it's the wine will cling to the side of the glass. It'll evaporate a little quicker and get to the top. And this wine is just really lovely to smell. And so I was just eager to just throw my nose right in there. And you mentioned sediment. Older wines, they will develop that over time. You don't want to drink that. So just if you have a decanter or a clean juice jug,
you don't want to chew your wine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's odd.
It's pretty sandy and gritty. So we would have left like an inch or two in the bottom of the bottle here if it had some sediment. This one isn't throwing too much, but yeah, don't drink the sediment. It's kind of gross.
Speaking of the scent, Adam, our producer here, he's manning the Facebook Live. If you want to check this out, go to Facebook. He mentioned right off the bat, like you basically just pop the bottle, and he's like, "Wow, you can smell that from over here," and he's a good 10 feet away.
10 feet away, absolutely.
When a wine ages like this one, does the smell get thicker with age?
Yeah, it gets different. So when a wine is young, it can really only smell or taste like one or two things.
Right.
And if a wine improves with age, it'll start smelling and tasting like 10, 11, 12, 15 things. Like it's getting complex. It's getting more elegant as well. But yeah, the aromatics might become more explosive. We might say more intense. And yeah, like a really great bottle of wine is easy to smell. It has really intense flavor. And hopefully it's a flavor you like. Like if you don't like a wine's flavor, sometimes the more intense it is, the more disgusting it'll be to you.
Right.
If it tastes like mushrooms or olives or dirt and you're not a fan of those things. But in this case, like this wine, I think would be very appealing. It's very like fruity and rich and delicious. And yeah, like it's filling the room up with aroma right now. That's a sign of a high quality wine.
I'm just hoping that the Calgary police officers don't happen to be listening, because they're going to be able to smell it on my breath for the next 3 days, and they're going to assume that I've been drinking and driving, which is not a good thing. We also talked about this one being from Napa Valley, and it's on the winery is on the top of a mountain.
So the Mayacamas Mountains is a mountain range that runs along the west side of Napa, and this is from one of those mountains that are part of is a part of the mountain range, Mount Veeder. So it's literally on top of that mountain. And there's a saying in the wine world that great wines like a view. Like a lot of the best vineyards in the world, they're planted on like steep slopes, because grapes don't like wet feet either. So if it rains, all that water is going to drain to the valley floor.
Right.
And then the vines on the side of the hill are left kind of dry, and the grapes ripen. They get really concentrated and thick and rich and intense. And this wine this winery's been around since the 19th century. It's one of the most collected and revered Napa Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's got a track record of just aging forever and being delicious and being worth the money.
Does, speaking of the top of the mountain, that kind of thing, and it's going to probably sound like a stupid question, but here I am still learning this wine thing. Does altitude play a factor when it comes to wine?
Absolutely. And basically, at altitude, it's going to slow the ripening process down. Usually at night, the temperature drops when you're at altitude, and it almost like it puts the grapes in the fridge overnight, and it stops the ripening process. And the longer a grape takes to ripen, the more flavor it's going to develop. So a lot of the best wines in the world are planted at altitude.
Right.
Instead of just having grapes ripen really quick, really fast, they don't develop a lot of flavor, or they kind of almost taste like sugary water. Mayacamas, they might be picking grapes in November, where some of their colleagues in the valley floor might be picking in September. Like there's a 2-month gap there, right? November versus September. So, and you just get something that's more flavorful.
So while I take a gulp of this stuff, explain again what it is. And you guys have a sale coming on,
don't
you?
So we brought this. This is the 2010 Mayacamas Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa. And we have a big sale at our Crowfoot location on November 30th from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is the type of wine we'll be opening. We'll be opening a ton of great older wine that, they're not inexpensive. This is about $210. But we'll be having crazy sales. We'll also have a bunch of beer and wine and spirits open, some food as well. It's kind of a customer appreciation event where we just want to say thanks for everyone's patronage. We want to spoil you a little bit. It's totally free. Come hang out with me, and we'll taste some really good stuff.
I'm going to steal this wine now because it is delicious. Eric Southward from Co-op Wine, Spirits and Beer. Wine Wednesday is brought to you by the Social Collection Wines, found exclusively at Co-op Wine, Spirits and Beer. Eric, thanks as always for coming in.
Thanks, Joe.